Welcome to episode number 2 of Stupid Human Interviews, where I, the stupid human, talks with a hopefully less stupid human. And just in case you were wondering, or perhaps were even concerned that this is the only kind of videos that I'm going to make from now on, let not your heart be troubled, because this is not the only kind of videos that I'm going to make from now on. I am still and will always be the queen of all that is GMRS, and I will continue to make Radio Dork videos, just not today. Are you ready? Pay attention. Allow me to introduce today's guest who needs no introduction. He runs the largest ham radio-related channel on the YouTubes. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Josh from Ham Radio Crash Course. Josh, welcome to the big time.
Hello, Randolfo. We have not spoken in a few months here, so it's nice to be in this interview studio you set up for us. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, nice to see you. Yeah, it's been a while since we've talked.
Yeah. So what's going
on with you?
Well, I'm busy. I'm constantly busy, but radio-wise, man, it's a great time to be in any form of radio. New radio's coming out all the time.
What a time to be a radio dork.
What a time. That's right. Nerds for days out here.
What's new and exciting in the radio world? Because I don't really care.
I know, right? We just kind of finished the major Hamfest season, right? It's kind of wrapped up. We won't go back to Hamfesting until next year when we go to Orlando. But Japan has their Hamfest. It's called the Tokyo Ham Fair, and the major manufacturers all announced a new radio. And so, that's the speculation gears start turning. Everybody wants to know, what's it going to do? Is it, by this, that, and the other thing? And so that's a lot of fun, the speculation train. And I guess everybody's starting to sell their past generations radios to get the scratch together to buy the new stuff. That's the game that starts.
What could a new radio possibly do? I mean, how many different ways can you chat with anonymous men on the air?
It's a really good question. So Yaesu, I'll use Yaesu for example. Yaesu had a radio, an old radio. Like, it's old enough to drink at this point. It's called the 817 and the 818, right? It's a little, looks like a car stereo type radio. And it was all band, all mode. So all the amateur radio bands, and it could do all the modes of operation. So FM, single sideband, AM, digital modes, all that. Well, they retired it. It's gone. And everybody's wondering, are they going to make another one? Is it coming back? And they are. And this one now has a big old screen, color screen. It's probably going to have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. But the big thing, and so this is what makes it really interesting for folks, is it's a full duplex. Do you have any full duplex radios? Oh, no, you probably not. Okay. So, sorry. The reason I say that is full duplex is like on a phone. Like we're talking right now. Like you can talk over me and I can hear you.
Talk and listen at the same time, right?
Right.
As opposed to press the button, talk, and let go of the button and then wait.
Right. So on GMRS, because you're all in that same frequency space, if you transmitted on one channel and tried to listen on the other channel, your radio would be overloading the receive side of that second channel, right? It just can't do it. So what this radio will let you do, full duplex, is you can transmit on one band of operation and receive on the other band of operation. And why hams like that is for satellite communication. So our ham satellites are dual banded. They'll have an uplink frequency and a downlink frequency. And so with one radio, you can work the satellites, which there's not a lot of radios that do that on the market. So people are pretty excited about it.
So it's kind of like a repeater, the way that a repeater works, except without the repeating part. It's like a repeater on simplex.
Exactly. Yeah, we do crossband repeaters in amateur radio where you'll have like a Baofeng on 2 meters and a Baofeng on 70 centimeters, and they'll cross feed into each other. Like that's the cheap way of doing it. Same kind of thing, but in space, right? So that's how you can communicate with it, which is awesome.
And who's in space that you need to talk with?
So it's a repeater in space. So I could be at home in California, and I could catch the rising edge of the satellite, and I could be talking to somebody states over on VHF, UHF, which is like, way beyond line of sight. So it's super fun. People have worked all states with FM satellites like that before in amateur radio, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds really, really exciting.
Hey, man. That's what we do on Sundays.
So the first real question, the hard-hitting question.
Okay.
Is it true that real men only drive Jeeps?
I don't know. See, I think it maybe starts out as yes, but as your quotient of rubber duckies fills up the dashboard, I think that lowers your masculine power significantly. It may have effect on your testosterone as well, I've heard.
All right. You got me.
You weren't expecting that one, were you? I know about Jeeps. I know what you guys do.
All right. Yeah. All right. So you have the biggest, the largest, by some measures,
Sure.
ham radio related YouTube's channel on the YouTubes. Why would anybody want to watch your channel? And what does your channel offer that more awesome channels don't offer, like my channel?
So I think the honest answer is kind of what people tell me more than what I like to esteem of myself. A lot of people have told me I have a pretty good way of explaining things to simplify things down. And I think that might come from my background as an engineer for software and systems engineering and aerospace type programs. And it's just kind of always been my job in some cases to help explain things, complicated questions, problems, designs of things in ways that isn't engineer speak, if you will. And so if you think about radio, particularly amateur radio, there's all kinds of complexities to it. And while I'm definitely not the expert in any one thing, I do have a capability to explain things, I think, in a relatively straightforward manner, at least to try to break it down.
On my channel, I tend to also explain things in a very simplified manner.
Yeah.
And then I get some people, they come and complain that I'm dumbing it down too much and that I didn't go into the quantum explanation of why the RF electricities, what? So do you, when you explain it simply, are some people still complaining? Or, because I thought, it seems to me like a lot of ham radio guys like the more complicated, the more complicated and fiddly you explain it, the more they like it.
So the last part first, I think the way to look at it is, I think that there's probably 20% of the amateur radio population, me just grabbing a number, that does like that deep theory and want to talk about that deep theory. But then the majority of them just want a solution, right? They want to actually see the thing work that they've been struggling with, actually use it, talk to people, make contacts with their computer, whatever it is, and they just want to see it work. So when I get pushback like that, it's like, oh, you kind of glossed over some of this stuff. I've been making videos now on the Ham Radio Crash Course since 2018, so I have literally hundreds of videos, and some of them I go into much greater detail. So I end up just linking them to one of those videos and goes, here's all that back end stuff, because a lot of my videos will cover that deep, the deep lore, if you will, the deep magics, but I don't get a lot of views on them because the really deep stuff is not, it appeals to that 20%, not that 80% of the population. And so they'll just sit out there in the archive, and I'll say, here you go, you can go take a look at that because that's got that detail you're probably looking for. And that seems to work
So it's
okay.
appealing to the normal people, that 80% of the normal people. That
yeah, I mean, I think if you focused on only the hardcore technical stuff as an amateur radio channel, you'd have some really diehard followers, but I think at the same time, like, you wouldn't reach that mass kind of popularity, if you will, of people that
superstardom.
are
We call that superstardom.
Right. The micro famous in a very niche hobby, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm a very big fish in a very tiny, tiny pond that nobody cares about. You mentioned when you were making it simple, you said when you make your videos simple, a lot of people just want to come and learn how to do this or that, to learn how to make a contact. And then earlier, when you're talking about the satellites, you're talking about making the contacts. What is this fascination that some people have with chatting with anonymous men all around the world? Explain that to us normal people.
Here, this is my best example to do it. So if you sit down and you look at a car and you're like, I wonder if that'll do 13 seconds in a quarter mile. And you're like, that's what stock will do. But if I throw a blower on this thing, that may drop a 1.5 seconds. And so now I'm I'm down in the 12s, the 13-second, or the 11-second type of thing. Now relate that to radio. What does that look like? Well, the making the contact is completing the quarter mile, but doing it faster, or in our case, doing it longer, right? That's what we're aiming to do a lot of times, is put up a better antenna, put more power behind the radio and the antenna, and see how far of a contact we can make. So, for instance, on my live stream yesterday, I made 5 contacts to Australia, made a couple to Indonesia, 2 to New Zealand. And now, to put some qualifiers behind this, I don't actually know if it was a dude on the other end. Likely, statistically, it was, because it was my computer using a digital mode called FT8, right? So from my home station.
That is not real radio.
Oh,
that
it absolutely is, buddy.
Radio,
yes,
sir.
it is. Yes, it is. Of course it is. Of course it is. Yeah, because, you could send emails, you can send text messages, you can do whatever over radio. The difference is that the mode of operation is a digital audio stream instead of my voice or Morse code or whatever.
So it's like anonymous chat rooms. Now,
yeah, it's the Omegle. It's the
chat.
Omegle of the chat roulette of the airwaves.
Right. You are. I don't have to ask this. You are a licensed and certified ham radio operator, are you not?
I do.
What are all your licenses and your credentials?
I hold the license of amateur extra, which is the top of the line.
Did you have to learn the dot?
No, good question. No, I got my technician general and extra after they changed the rules on that. I believe the rules changed in 1995 that removed the requirement. But oddly enough, we're now seeing a resurgence in Morse code, CW, where I now have learned it. I can do it. I'm not very good at it, but I have activated a Summits on the Air summit using Morse code, which I'm fairly proud of.
Yeah, again, sounds very exciting.
That's right. Hiking, man. Getting outdoors.
How long have you been the ham radio operator, and why?
In 2000.
When did you get started and why?
Yeah. Oh, actually, we can go back a little bit further than that. I was a Boy Scout, and in some summer camp years ago back in the 90s, there was a Scoutmaster who had a Kenwood. I remember to this day. Kenwood radios. He's holding it, and he's trying to explain to me what he's doing, but I think he was very focused on the technical, and he didn't really understand my question, or I didn't understand his answer. But he told me,
so you asked him what time is it, and he explained to you how the clock not only works but is designed and the history.
Yeah. So I asked him, like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm trying to connect to this repeater. Now, I was a internet video game kid in the late 90s, so I was thinking like some kind of a server he was logging into. But no, he was just trying to talk on this repeater, and he wasn't able to make the connection, whatever. So years later, he called it ham radio, and I totally forgot about it. And then years later, I went to work for a company that nobody's heard of called Boeing, and I was working in the lab late one evening, or actually no, it was early afternoon because I think we took a lunch break. But anyway, the lab manager came up to me and we were working on something together. He goes, hey, have you heard of this ham radio thing before? And I was like, yeah, I heard about that when I was in Scouts. And he goes, hey, come check this out. And he pulls this, at the time, top-of-the-line Yaesu handheld out of his bag that had a GPS antenna on top of it, and it could take his location and squawk out what we call a beacon, and the beacon has his elevation, his heading, speed. It had a weather channel thing that you could plug into it, that you could give like weather data in some cases. Some radios did that. And I was like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. And he goes, well, hey, we're in Anaheim. I was at Boeing in Anaheim at the time. And he was like, let's go down to Ham Radio Outlet, which is in Anaheim, right down the street, basically.
Oh, that's like the Disneyland for dorks, right?
Oh yeah, it's and what's funny enough is the real Disneyland is right down the street from the Disneyland for dorks, which we'd still go to the HRO.
Well, Walt Disney modeled the park after the Ham Radio
Tomorrowland at least. Tomorrowland, of course, right? That's what you.
Well, I was thinking Fantasyland.
But yes, that too. So the guy who sold me my first radio still works there. His name's Bob. And I got a Gordon West test.
Shout out to Bob at Ham Radio Outlet in
Shout out to Bob. He's the
Anaheim.
Man. That's right. Anacrime, as we call it out here. And took it home, got it set up, got on the repeaters, started learning got my license, of course. And yeah, that's kind of been it. It's just been on since that 2017. Oh no, sorry, 2007. Geez, I was a whole decade off.
I was going to say 2017. That's not that long, but okay, yeah, 2007. That seems a bit more fitting. So then, what is your either the best radio or your favorite ham radio to use for making contacts to chat with anonymous men? Either the best or your favorite. I assume it's the same because you probably have every radio that, like me, that they make.
You know, I jokingly have been using the old tried and true gun analogy of the best ham radio is the one you got on you. You know, that's
in your pocket.
That's right. Actually, I have a couple of them right here next to me. I'll throw it over to the overhead.
Wait, well, okay.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay,
so it looks like a phone. Looks like an old.
That's the one that I've been using the most recently. That's my handheld of choice, the Kenwood.
What is it? I can't read the brand. What is it?
Kenwood THD75. And
how much does one of those set you back?
Only
if you had to pay for it, because we know you get all your stuff for free.
No, I bought 2 of them now personally. Only $750 is the price of that one to set you back.
Only, yeah,
I think they're cheaper than that now. But so that's VHF UHF, right? That's the line of sight, handycom type stuff. The other radio that I use primarily is the ICOM IC705. That's my primary HF radio because I can carry that around with me everywhere.
And what does somebody pay for one of those to chat with anonymous men?
$1,000 to $1,200, and that one is all band, all mode. That'll do everything.
That was a HT, or that's a big radio?
That's a bigger radio. I can show you that too. Yeah, here. So this is it's bigger. God, look at all this stuff I have. I'm also making videos here, so I'll turn it on for you. So this guy is much bigger, and it has its own internal battery, but it'll do all the things: VHF, UHF, HF,
all
which
the
we
things
call high
that
frequency.
My Bufwang UV5R can do.
No, it'll do significantly more than your Bufwang, sir. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Can it? I'll bet you my Bufwang does something that fancy radio doesn't do.
It doesn't have a flashlight.
2 things. All right, I didn't think of that.
It doesn't have a flashlight, but no. So keep in mind,
it doesn't have a Roger beep.
Oh, you can turn Roger beeps on that.
Oh, really? Sure. Okay, so then it is all right. My respect. Then it's
a high quality radio. It's a high quality radio.
Right.
That's right.
Okay.
So with that one, it'll do HF, right? High frequency, which is the beyond line of sight with the long antennas. But all those, usually, the voice comms down there is what we call single sideband. And you can take that single sideband mode of operation and actually use it on VHF, UHF, which Baofangs will not do. Those are FM only. And the ICOM will do whatever you want. Single sideband, FM, AM, Morse code. It don't care.
So do you have have you purchased your GMRS license?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Why? What do you use GMRS for? Do you use it?
With my kids. Hand them a GMRS radio, handhelds. Oftentimes I'll hand them like an FRS, and then I'll have like a proper Wouxun radio. And
Wuxin.
Yeah,
God damn it. Wuxin. Ocean.
No, it's Wouxun.
Wuxin.
My Chinese wife says otherwise.
My next door neighbor who lived in Japan for 5 years, he says that it is Wuxin.
The Japanese person is telling you how to pronounce a Chinese word?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, it's Chinese? It's Chinese?
Yes, of course. It's no. So
all right,
it's great.
So
for
you
families.
give the kids an FRS radio, right? Well, see, now this is something that some people just cannot get through their thick skulls. Is why would you want to use a GMRS radio? I can talk around the world, and yeah, because when I'm off-roading, I don't want to talk around the world, and they can't understand that there's other uses for a radio that have nothing to do with chatting with anonymous men around the fucking world.
The thing that I always want to remind people is a radio is a tool. Now, just because the tool also requires you have a license of a particular service, that doesn't make it any less of a tool. A CB radio is a tool that you can consider in certain situations, right? FCC business licenses that allow encrypted radios is a tool. For some people, that might be what you need for whatever you're doing.
That's what I have, by the way. I have a business license. I can talk encrypted, high power. I forget what the limit is, but pretty high power. Many people say that's better than a ham radio license.
I think people get, well, you know what it is. It's like this brand loyalty. It's almost like PlayStation versus Xbox, your favorite brand of cigarettes, whatever. People just want to look for a reason to complain that I'm doing something better than you are. And at the end of the day, it's just a tool. If it works to whatever your missions, your goals are, your family weekend plans, then that's the right answer. It's always the right answer if it works for you.
That is the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
Is GMRS, a lot of people say this, is GMRS just ham light? Is it a gateway?
Yes and no, right? I think for you, like if you were to ask me to critique you, I think you use it appropriately as a tool. It's something that allows you to stay in communication with the people that are also doing the things you're doing. So that's one aspect of GMRS. And then I think there's a sub-segment, I don't know how big this is, that is amateur radio operators that are amateur radioing on GMRS. So
right.
And they're pushing the boundaries of what's technically feasible in that space, I think.
And there are also a lot of guys that are what I call latent sad hams. I haven't used that word sad ham in a long time, by the way. They don't know, they're in the closet. They don't know that they have the sad ham defect, and so they start with GMRS either because they're just learning or they can't pass the test yet or whatever, and they basically they start with GMRS and then we finally push them out and then they make their way up to ham radio where they belong and should stay.
I think you can do both, and I don't think there's a problem. So again, you got jerks on all sides, right? Because I've seen some pretty bad actors on GMRS here locally in Southern California.
Those guys are all licensed ham radio operators.
Okay. I don't know if we can claim that statistically, but we got the jerks on amateur radio. I
just claimed it.
Okay.
I'm a YouTube superstar. I can claim whatever I want.
That's it. You've done serious top men have worked on this for the investigations needed. But, it's just it's a subset of humanity. If humanity's full of jerks, there's going to be jerks in GMRS and there's going to be jerks on ham radio. That's just the law of averages.
They just shine so well in the ham radio world, especially online. So I know a lot of people, a lot of ham guys that I know, most ham guys that I know have said that they don't run into these guys on the air usually. And I want to say 100% of the ham radio operators that I know in person are great guys. But it's when you go online, especially if you're new looking to learn ham radio, and you go online and you ask a question, right? How do I get my boofwang to do whatever? And these guys, it's like the Walking Dead when they smell brains. And they just come out of the woodwork and they attack them and they chase them away. And it's just maddening. And I don't even care. I'm not even a ham radio operator. I don't even care, but it's still maddening.
Well,
it's embarrassing. These guys are making you guys look bad.
I have heard really bad conversations on GMRS. Some of the worst. That puts the 435 to shame. Almost, not totally. You know about the 435.
The 435. The logo. Those of us that. Well, I know what it is. Explain it to the.
It's a repeater that we have down in Southern California that is considered
we being
like
you ham radio operators.
Well, we collectively, you're in Southern California too, so I mean, like it's physically here, right? It's like the Mos Eisley cantina of amateur radio repeaters, the hive of scum and villainy that exists, and so much so that the FCC knows about it, and they're like, well, if we just keep them there, then the toxicity won't spread, is kind of the attitude. Which I'm not going to say my points on that, but for what you were saying earlier about folks online and people asking questions. So my wife and I do a podcast. It's called the Ham Radio Crash Course Podcast. Really, really inventive. But
where can we find that podcast?
Everywhere. Everywhere you podcast. It's everywhere. No problem. Just search Ham Radio Crash Course. You'll find it. But she cooked up this segment months ago, and we call it like salted hams in the something cellar, and it's
you didn't pay the copyright fee to say sad hams, right?
No, that's right. But it's her going on to like the Facebook groups and seeing if she can find the worst actors, the worst replies from amateur radio operators. And we've had some really good ones. We've found some really good ones, and we just go to town on them. But this last episode we did, she called me in, and we're spending like 30 minutes going through the Facebook, which Facebook groups is pretty bad generally, looking for the bad actors, going after the new hams or just anything. We found like one after 30 minutes, and it was benign, and we had to go all the way back to March to find the post. So I don't know. Either the admins are getting better at pruning the bad posts, or younger generations are stepping in and going like, hey, man, nobody cares about your opinion.
I know what
Shut
it
up.
is. See,
what is it?
There's this one YouTube channel that has shined the light of the disinfectant of sunshine upon this group of sad hams.
Yeah.
And at the monthly sad ham meetings, they're starting to talk, saying, it's not going well for us, guys. We got to lighten up. So you're welcome.
Off.
Yeah, you're welcome to everyone for bringing this disinfectant to the sad ham world and reducing their.
I'm sure
prevalence.
There is an effect of that. I think actually I've also done some of that over the last 5 years. Going so far as I would record arguments of people on the air, and then I would break out my synthesizer and make like EDM tracks sampling their fighting on it. And I use that as my bumper for my live stream after chat every week. I'll have like a song that I play in the background of something I just cooked up. But I actually wonder how much of it is just some people aging out of the hobby. The folks who probably don't do much operating of the radio, and they really just get on to the internet to complain, because that's easy. Being a salty person on the internet is super easy, but getting out there and using the radios, going into the field, setting up the antennas and all that stuff, that they might not be doing that anymore. And I don't know.
Can't get on the roof anymore. Can't get out of the...
I'll tell you what.
What do they call those things that you roll around at the Walmart? The little hover rounds?
Hover rounds, the scooters, yeah, the electric scooters, yeah. I'll tell you what, though. For all the bad times I see on repeaters and on FM handheld type radio stuff, I see less of that when you go to like HF radio. Like when we did that, the Big Bear trip, when we drove out and I set up that radio and I made those contacts with people, didn't really get any sad hams over the radio there. A lot of those guys, a lot of pride in the stations that they're putting up, and you don't see as much of that, at least in my experience.
Yeah. So I guess they're not all bad. Why is GMRS repeater linking such a horrible thing? A lot of news about linking GMRS repeaters lately. And and nothing has really changed. Oh, they've updated the law. FCC is the one thing I heard the most. Yeah. FCC is going after. They're not going after anybody. They just made their rules a little more easy to understand. The rules didn't change. It was the public webpage that they changed and updated, because I always interpreted the linking when I read that rule as telephone line only or POTS lines only or whatever the wording was. I didn't interpret linking over the internet as being against their rules. Well, not that it matters, but
they did fix the cover page, I guess, on the GMRS site for FRS. But what I remembered it said before this last iteration was, POTS line linking or any other network. And so, I'm thinking as an engineer.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. I'm thinking as an engineer that they put that front part in to use as an example, and then people just read that and ran with it and said, oh, as long as I use the internet, we're good. But it's really the meat and potatoes of it was or any other network. So let me just say right up front, because I made a video on this. You've made a ton of videos doing the interviews and all that, and I watched a lot of them. I don't really care. I don't have a dog in this race because, frankly, I don't use GMRS linked repeaters. I use them for simplex comms. I am a GMRS license holder, so I can have an opinion here. But at the same time, I think amateur radio operators getting in on this is kind of like, okay, it's not affecting us.
Stay in your lane.
Right.
Stay in your lane.
It doesn't really affect us.
Because you're breaking the rules. You're breaking the rules.
Yeah. So here's the part where now I'm not speaking as me. This is just me assessing what I've heard the FCC say, like at that banquet that I did the video on, where they had that panel up in the front. I think the FCC would like to have a clear delineation between the services, right? And so they have drawn a line, an arbitrary line. GMRS is for the box. The box can do this thing, which is repeating, or it's a handheld, or it's a mobile radio, and it's for local communication. I think that's the rough idea of what they want the service to be. And then for everything else that is bringing in other networks, attaching technologies, integrating technologies into radio, they would want to point you towards amateur radio. Again, this is my assessment of what their opinion is.
Yeah, that seems about right. And there's really, it can be frustrating if you're listening to your radio and you're hearing some guy in New York telling stories. Again, the long talkers that are just talking. They're just talking to hear themselves talk. I don't know why they're talking. They never shut up. And those are the guys, that's the latent sad ham, or he is probably also a licensed ham. Yeah. And so not only is he jamming up my channel in Los Angeles, depending on the network that you're listening to, he could be jamming up that channel, in 50 or 20 other states or 50 other states. So that is, that makes sense.
You told me about this. So in amateur radio, when we set up a repeater, we have a volunteer frequency coordinator. And they kind of have like a rough area that they're responsible for. And the reason for that is so we don't have two repeaters that step on each other for interference.
Oh, yeah. Well, you get none of that in GMRS.
Yeah, you told me that there's none of that in GMRS. So, hypothetically, you could have a pretty good local GMRS repeater on some channel, whatever. And it's a cool spot. It's a little little hangout spot for everybody on the radio, which is great. But then somebody could just elect to set up their own repeater within range of that first one on the same channel with the same offset, the same tone, whatever, more power, maybe a higher up antenna, and then they could link it to a repeater in New York, and all of a sudden you just upset the apple cart of the whole community, and you guys don't have many repeater channels to start with too, so it's a finite asset that you kind of have to monitor it, or not monitor it, but you got to be a little bit more cooperative with how you use it.
Right. It's kind of it's funny. It's like a first world problem that here in the LA area, all 8 repeater channels are not only in use, but they're in use by multiple repeaters. So it's just like it's a shit show out here. Where some guy in Montana is like, I can't find anybody to talk to, and there's no repeaters anywhere. So
that's a unique problem we have, right? That's like the slippery slope example. That's the worst possible example. But again, Montana, using the Montana example, they probably don't give a hoot about a linked repeater system because they've got 7 other channels that are not being used that they could put theirs up, over a weekend at camp or temporary or whatever. But yeah, out here in California, we're lousy with GMRS repeaters. We got them everywhere.
One time a licensed ham radio operator yelled at me in an online forum because I said I have a cheap Chinese radio, a CCR.
Oh, that's funny.
What is wrong with having a cheap Chinese radio, and why in the fuck would he care what kind of radio I use? You already touched on that a little bit with that brand, or reinforcing that what I have is right and what you have is wrong. Why? What is wrong with these people?
It's brand elitism, right? Everybody wants to justify their purchase, right, as being the best purchase.
What's wrong with using a $18 radio?
All right, so this is the Josh textbook answer for what is wrong with it, and it varies from radio to radio. It doesn't have to be
RF emissions.
Spurious RF emissions. But did you watch my video on that? I don't want to assume you watch my videos, but where I took my SDR receiving station and I turned it on to the even harmonics of the radio. So if the radio is transmitting, let's use GMRS, right, on 440 megahertz, somewhere around there.
GMRS does not use 440, but go on.
Or you know what I mean. Sorry.
Don't confuse my viewers, Josh.
Sorry. We're saying UHF, though, higher frequencies. Well, so the harmonics of that radio, it will like double them, right? And there'll be upper frequencies that are a harmonic of that fundamental, the frequency that's on your radio. Well, if it's a cheap radio, not necessarily Chinese, it could be other manufacturer, if it's cheap and it doesn't have filtering built in, you are transmitting on those even harmonics as you go up the frequency. And I went a mile from my house, no, about a half a mile from my house, and I was using a handheld transmitting, and I could hear all those even harmonics of what I was transmitting on. So you are just losing power in some cases, but more often than not, you're transmitting on those other frequencies. And those other frequencies are licensed for other radio services. It could be first responders, likely not, but other people, right, are actually on those frequencies hypothetically, because the FCC has said, yep, in this space, that's where they operate.
And you know why I know that's not true?
Why is that?
Because those same licensed and certified operators have said that these CCR, these cheap Chinese radios, can't even transmit a mile.
It
So
totally
how
does.
are you going to? And
Totally
every
does.
harmonic, each harmonic. So if this is outputting, say 5 watts, which it
Yeah.
never will, but let's just say 5 watts. The first harmonic is going to be like 3 watts, and the second harmonic is going to be like 1 watt, and so on, right? So that those spurious RF emissions aren't going out at full power. Is that correct?
Well, sure, but very little suppression. So the talk pod was the radio I used, because there's like no suppression. I could hear myself clear as day. You can watch the video. I have the recordings on my home station, a quarter mile from my house, on all those even harmonics. So yes, you can. So I mean, I know people contradict themselves on the internet when they argue, and I thought, well, let's put that to bed. Let's just go test it. And sure enough, it's like, yeah, you are actually transmitting on those frequencies. Now, at the same time, the likelihood of you actually interfering with an important service and somebody special that's doing something important is incredibly low, to the point of it being almost non-existent. So it doesn't really matter.
And if you're off-roading in the middle of nowhere,
Oh, absolutely. Nobody cares.
chances
Yeah.
are 0.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the good thing about the cheap Chinese radios, or just the Japanese companies are picking up on Chinese manufacturing. They're selling inexpensive radios that are made in China as well, and other places. It's lowered the barrier to entry to a point that is welcoming to everyone, just about everybody. $17 Baofeng on Amazon is like impossible to beat, right? So yeah, I don't see any problem with it. One of my first videos that ever popped off on the internet was my Baofeng, one of my Baofeng videos. And it's like, why? Well, because it's cheap.
More
and
people
it's
own the Boofwang
bringing it in.
than any other. I always say more people own Boofwangs than all other radios combined. I just made that
Probably.
up, but it is probably true or very close to being true.
It's kind of like
Everybody owns one. Who doesn't have one?
It's kind of like the joke about the scooter, the Honda Cub. There are more Honda Cubs in the world that were made in the 70s than like every other vehicle that's ever been manufactured, right? So it's kind of like that. You've never really heard of it.
The little Vespa looking thing?
Yeah, that's like in Vietnam and a bunch of Southeast Asian countries and all that. Like they're everywhere. They're prolific. You know it's everywhere when just random television shows and B movies have a guy with a Baofeng strapped on their arm or their shoulder, and that's just now the universal identifier of a radio in modern culture. It's hilarious.
It's Boofwang, by the way. You pronounced it wrong. Boofwang.
Boofwang.
So in my attempt to be more like you and to grow my channel and get more viewers,
You're doing great, man.
I have started to grow out my beard.
Oh, good. Yes.
So as a beard expert, how do you keep the food out and the bugs out and keep it from stinking? What do you do? How do you maintain your manly facial muff?
I noticed that I use napkins a lot more. Like if I'm just eating food and I'm looking at the non-bearded among myself when I'm eating, they'll be like just eating and a napkin, dab, dab, dab. Whereas I'm like taking a bite or two and then I'm like dab, 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 or whatever. It also depends on what you're eating. A lot of times, barbecue, big saucy barbecue rib, this is all a bit of a problem. And then, you go to the restroom, you clean yourself off a little bit, you get back to what you're doing.
Cleaning yourself off. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me write that one down.
Yeah.
Do you
Shower
use
daily.
Do you use the wax or any styling products?
Occasionally. I have nothing in this right now. I haven't had really a need to, but I have, occasionally. Last 2 weekends ago, my wife, I was her plus one to a wedding that we went to, and I threw a little bit of wax in there, and I have a beaver fur brush that I use to comb out the old beard, and that works pretty.
Do you have to exfoliate underneath to get all the dead skin off?
No, I'll occasionally hit it.
So it's just skin's just falling in your food when you're eating, and
well, no, I would say that I guess I'm not. I don't have beard dandruff, I guess, is the point there. But I do shampoo and soap and wash. I mean, you got to do all that. That seems to do the job well enough.
All right, I'm working on it. So the Jeeping people, my Jeep viewers, will know that we were thinking about maybe buying another Jeep, the XJ model. And if you know any Jeepers that drive XJs, it's apparently a law that you have to have a big beard. So,
like you actually can't purchase it, and they take a little precision ruler and they test the length of the beard. Yeah, of course,
must have a beard.
Yeah.
In your experience, go ahead.
I was going to say then you have some the beard loophole is you have to buy the Jeep on the used market out of state, and then you have to bring it in to state. Right, that's the beard loophole.
That's one way around. Right.
Yeah.
Right. In your experience, are you able to chat with more anonymous men using a ham radio or by just using the Grindr app? Which have you had more success with?
I don't think I know of the Grindr app, but I don't have it loaded.
Yeah.
Maybe
sure.
I should look into that, because obviously I am a fan of talking to anonymous men. So I'll take a look into that.
Yeah, you should check it out. Everybody check out the Grindr app.
Now,
I'll leave an affiliate link below.
What's funny is I guess it's the micro famousness of what we do out here, Randolfo. But last weekend I did a live stream where I was just making contacts with people while I was live, and I have never had a pileup of people coming back to me than I've ever seen on radio before. It was crazy. Like I could barely pick out a couple of letters in call signs. It was just a cacophony of noise. It was crazy. Really, really
It's great
wild.
being famous. It's great. I sort of, when I go off-roading, it is an unusual, because for those of you that have watched my channel for a long time, you know that I used to make off-roading videos, and some of those did pretty well. We had a whole series that was on Amazon, Amazon Prime Video, that did extremely well, probably better than all other videos combined on YouTube. And every time we go off-roading, if we don't have one or more or multiple people coming up and wanting to take pictures and selfies in front of the Jeep, it's unusual. So it's nice. It's nice being famous until you're like trying to eat lunch, and I'm not complaining. I love all my viewers. Because whoever you are my favorite viewer. I'm not pointing at you, Josh. I'm pointing at the viewer.
Oh, I know. The micro famousness though. Do you actually get stopped randomly in public?
I have been stopped in the grocery store.
Yeah, me too.
A couple of times. That's a rarity.
Okay.
But in public at a off-roading,
sure.
in the off-roading world, that is in public. Yeah, that happens every time we're off-roading. Basically.
So that's the best part about this is I go to the ham radio outlet, people know me. I go to a ham fest, people know me. Stop, take pictures, I'm handing out stickers, doing the whole thing. That's great because you can just leave that, right? That you can just go be a normal person outside of that, which is glorious, right? So that's probably the best example of the micro fame thing, is that when you go to a very specific place or location, then you can expect to have people recognize you. But otherwise, we're just chilling, we're having fun.
Yeah. I guess this is probably true for both of us. I haven't quite yet reached the Justin Bieber level.
I hope we don't.
Fame.
I hope we don't.
When you go off-roading or adventuring, or you're doing anything not sitting on the couch, what kind of radios do you use, and why do you use that particular type of radio when you leave the house? Doing group things with normal people. Yeah.
Oh, like just going to the park, or like actually going outdoors proper?
Well, hopefully you're not taking radios with you when you go to the park. But
I take them everywhere, Randy, everywhere.
Jesus.
Everywhere.
Christ.
Everywhere.
When we go off-roading, of course, it's a group thing with normal people. We need radios. So anytime you would need to, if you went hiking, which I know you never do, or airsoft, tournaments, which I know you never do, or you go shooting.
No, I went hiking. But
Did you? Did you?
Yeah.
Just you, or with a group? And did you take radios?
No. I've got another ham buddy. He's a YouTuber as well, K6ARK, and so this is the second year we go up to the Sierras. Last year, we went up to Heart Lake out of the No, that's not right. Outside the Onion Valley camping area above Lone Pine. Anyway, that was like a 3-mile hike in to this really pristine lake, middle of nowhere. We were fly fishing for trout. My son learned to fly fish, and we brought a couple of radios with us to activate the park because we're in park boundaries for Parks on the Air. I brought a Elecraft KX2, which is a smaller little boxy radio that is very easy to backpack, right? Because we were backpacking. It's bear country, so we had our food in a bear box, the whole 9 yards. So that's packing relatively light. I'll usually pack that radio. And then last month, we did our second year of it. There was lightning, though, so we decided to just camp at Silver Lake, which is by June Lake. And that one I had, because I got my truck with me, and I can run everything off the truck, I had a larger 100-watt radio, which was in a Pelican case. And that worked out beautifully. That was a great little setup, too. So it was a little waterproof job. You just open the hatch and start up playing radio. It's pretty simple. When I'm hiking, I'll carry that Kenwood THD75 because it does APRS, which is it's called Automatic Packet Reporting System. It'll take the GPS location and it'll kind of show where my heading is and my elevation. That's great when you're out hiking in the middle of nowhere because then, my wife will know if I expire where to come collect the body and all my possessions and all that, which really saves the search and rescue people some time. But that's a handy tip. I think GMRS also has that function with some radios right now. Similar, not the same, but similar, right?
A couple of new radios just in the last. BTEC came up with one almost a year ago, and they were like the first one. It was a big deal. And now there's a couple different models from different brands that do that, but it's not APRS. And as far as I know, they're not compatible. It's just you have to have that same model of radio. And it's not super, super useful. It's not like broadcasting it out. Because with APRS, you could send it to a website or something, right? So people can track you online. It's a lot more versatile. Gosh, it's like ham radio is so much better.
There's actually the ability you can text people via it, and you can send email, and you can do some other stuff. Of course, that depends on you being able to hit a repeater with your packet, and we call those repeaters digipeaters because they're just only there for APRS functionality.
Right, so if you're actually down in a valley somewhere, that's not going to do you any good.
Very good point. Yeah, that's why I also carry a spot, the little Garmin spot devices.
I was just going to say, us normal people use the Garmin. I use the InReach Mini.
That's what I have too. Again, that's a tool. It's a radio. It's a tool, and it serves a very specific function. And I'll pay the $7 a month, for peace of mind. And I think that's a layered approach for communications. It's a good way to go.
The new iPhones, I guess actually not even the brand new ones, the ones starting last year, have a satellite connectivity option for SOS help. And then I don't know if this feature is new or not, but sending texts.
Yeah,
and now some videos or pictures through the satellites. So I'm going to compare the two soon here. I'm going to go get a new phone and.
Oh, there you go.
And because a lot of people are saying that the new iPhones are going to put Garmin out of business, and I don't think they are because the Garmin still does quite a bit more than just the phone as far as emergency communication. It does.
Have you ever heard of something called the PACE plan? I know you did an interview with the Gorilla the Gorilla Comms Baofeng book. Did he mention PACE plan at all when you were talking?
He probably did, but I don't remember. No, I don't recall that.
So there's a special forces term that I learned years ago from Mike Glover, where you have a layered approach for communications, particularly if you're going outdoors. I don't mean like day-to-day stuff. So you have your primary mode of communication, your alternate mode of communication, your contingent mode of communication, and then the emergency mode of communication. And those should be different devices, right? Because I love my iPhone, let's call that the primary mode of communication. So if I lose my iPhone or it breaks or I run out of battery, then I no longer have the satellite capability anymore. I don't have the emergency factor down here. I can't count on that for an emergency. The Garmin, from my point of view, is my emergency, the oh shit factor button. You pop the lid off of it, slam that button down, and that's calling in the cavalry, right? So I'll have a P, an A, a C, and an E, and the E is generally the Garmin. When all the chips are down, we're calling the big guns in to get people out, kind of thing.
I'm not that smart, but but I do use the Garmin. It's great because I can send text messages home. I can send text messages anyway. It lets whoever I allow track me in pretty much near real time where I am on the website.
What's funny about that is I bought the Garmin like a couple years ago, or like last year when it was on sale, the Mini 2 or something like that. And I texted my wife. I got it all excited. I'm all excited. I got it up and running. I texted my wife. I'm like, hey, honey, this is, when I'm outdoors or whatever, this is me. And a year later, I tell her, okay, we're going out. I'm taking the kids. We're going up to the Sierras. I'll be on that Garmin number. Let me text you. And she's like, I didn't get the text. I'm like, well, I sent it to you like a while back. Did you not get it? She's like, I mean, I get some weird texts. I just block those numbers. So she actually had blocked the Garmin number and had to go back in and clear it out because she was like, I don't know, some weirdo's trying to text me.
Do you program your radios like real men do by hand, or do you use a computer to program
Can I just say yes and cover both bases? I'm both a man and also technically savvy. I use both. I will oftentimes not program the Baofangs by hand and just go to chirp, but a lot of the Japanese radios are significantly easier to program from my point of view than Baofangs, and so I just do those by hand often.
I still say real men always do it by
Always?
hand.
Always by hand. Oh, okay.
Always.
Yeah. I guess I need some help occasionally from other means.
Why is on GMRS or ham bands, why is the Roger beep such a huge issue for some people? And why do they feel the need to go around enforcing and inflicting their opinion on everyone else?
I think
What's
it comes
wrong
from
with these people.
I think it comes from repeater like etiquette and community, right? So a repeater, there's two things about a repeater, right? Actually, there's multiple things, but let's just focus on the two. When you're talking on a repeater, there's some lag, I call it, right? When you unkey and before the next person can key up to reply back. And even then you get people that don't realize you got to hold it down for like a half second before you start talking. So all of a sudden they'll lose the front half of whatever they're saying because they're already talking before they key up the mic, that kind of thing. And when you have a Roger beep, it's just like it slows down the conversation from some people's point of view. And to them it's like, well, this is just prolonging what we're doing out here, which is kind of funny because I bet you there's probably some correlation between the people who hate the Roger beep are also the same people who do what you don't like, which is just blather on over and over
all
and over.
night long, all day long, every day.
Yes. Yeah.
You're slowing me down.
You're slowing me down, man. Yeah, so they get real upset about a millisecond long beep, but then they'll time out a repeater going 3 minutes on one single reply.
Okay, so on a repeater, there is at least an argument, although I think it's an invalid argument. There is at least an argument against the Roger beep. Why then do they carry that preference to me talking on Simplex or even just talking about it in an online forum? What is this broken mental mentality?
It's indoctrination, right?
It's like a cult, and they want to. I don't know what it is.
Simplex is kind of handy, actually, right? Because you could be out on the edges of where the two parties can talk, and the Roger beep can kind of help you, like, because again, it's just a beep, right? It's like deep, it's like a deep hit that, okay, they're off the mic. It's not that you're both walking in different directions and they're fading out and you just are losing them. And they're going to snap back in at the conversation. You're going to miss the whole part of it, and you're going to have to say, no, retransmit, I lost that. The Roger beep can help you with that because sometimes it'll punch through if there's a bit of, fading or whatnot that's going on. I think also some of it might have a tradition in the CB hobby, I think, too. I think a lot of the Roger beep stuff carried over from that. And that's another thing, people, tribalism, right? They get that tribalism going, and they're like, nope, we can't have any of that. If it was popular in CB, it's anathema now. We got to get rid of it and expel it from our ranks. That's I think that's the origin of it, more likely than just repeater culture.
And so is it good or bad? What do you say?
If it gets in the way of having a communication, then I would say it's bad. Like, it just getting through with it, getting on with it. If you are going to be talking to the guy for over an hour on a repeater, right, and you're all just party lining it, it might get a little tiresome hearing it, but most of the time I don't think it matters. I think most people don't even really notice it unless it's like, you know, the old joke is, have you ever paid attention to the laugh track in The Big Bang Theory? And if you hadn't, you will
funny
now.
Okay, so that's funny. I cannot stand that show. I have never watched more than 10 seconds of that show because my wife thought it was great. And one of the reasons, it's a stupid show, but the other reason, probably the bigger reason, is because that fake, stupid, ball-busting laughter over every stupid little line. So
it drives me up the frickin' wall. And for everybody that's watching it that didn't notice the laugh track and likes the show, I bet we just ruined the show for you, because you will not be able to not hear it now. You can't.
You're welcome to all those people. So here's the thing. If we're comparing that laugh track to the Roger beep, some people will go online and complain and call me names and everything because, or on the radio, get really upset and angry and start yelling about hearing the Roger beep because it's my radio, my choice. Right. I have my Roger beep on. It's my choice. Whereas when I hear that stupid laugh track, I don't start yelling at my wife. I either just turn the channel or I walk away.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have to go inflicting I don't have this uncontrollable desire to inflict my control over everyone else around me, like some people.
It's a human nature thing, right? I think it comes down to human nature.
No, it's an asshole thing.
But we do that in society. You get, church ladies telling people how to live their lives, and you get, the Jeep guys all telling people you can't do this, you can't do that, right? Like every hobby, every society, every group, every small community within a community, all have people that are trying to dictate social norms, right? Even little dogs do that, right? The big dog that lives at the house goes and corrects the puppy for doing something the dog doesn't like. It's almost like just nature. The way nature works is somebody's always got to be pecking at somebody else for just living their life and trying to have a go at it. I don't know, man. I hear you. I hear you. Drives me nuts because there's multiple things in amateur radio where people are like that. And it's like, what do you care? Like, why do you care? It doesn't matter.
I don't understand. So speaking of assholes,
sure.
Many people say that I bash all ham radio operators. This is a recurring, when the people are in their crusades, the haters against me,
right,
in their online, God, Jesus, it is so funny.
I think
when they're just attacking me, not on my channel, attack me on my channel in the comments, that's one thing, but then to start a crusade on Facebook and in the online forums, why would you think that some people say that I bash all ham radio operators and ham radio in general?
I think that they probably resemble the thing that you're talking about or rallying against, and the hobby is just an extension of who they are, right?
No, I think for some people, that's all they are.
Okay, fine. Fine.
Some of them.
Fair. And so if you are attacking them, you are also, by default, attacking all of amateur radio, which is impossible because amateur radio is so huge. It's impossibly large that they're seeing a resemblance in themselves in what you're saying. And also, you're doing it in a way that's not flattering. So I think they're taking offense to it, of course. And then it's going to the next level of, wait a second, he's attacking me. And that means he's attacking everybody, like that kind of thing. And it's like...
But so for your viewers that might be tuning in who have never seen or heard of me...
Oh, I doubt
which
that.
Which is hard to believe. But for those that may not be familiar with my style and brand of YouTubing... Who when you as a ham radio operator, when I say the things that I say, who am I attacking in a very subtle way? If I'm not attacking all ham radio operators, which I'm not, who am I attacking? Who am I making fun of?
And again, you said you toned back on using the term sad hams, but even that in itself, right? And I have learned since then that actually that term's existed, I think, before you popularized it, but you did bring it up to another level for sure. It's the person who is doing what they're doing for reasons that go beyond simply helping somebody, right? Let's take the easy answer, like the easy example. Somebody goes on a Facebook group and says, hey, I'm trying to set up a 20-meter dipole on my home. It's going to be my first antenna. I've got a bunch of leftover wire from when we remodeled the garage or the kitchen, and I got a painter's pole, telescoping painter's pole. And I'm gonna set that up. Or my favorite is when they'll say they're going to use conduit or something like that, right? And then you'll just get a ton of people that dive in, and they just start henpecking the guy, like incessantly, telling him, oh, you can't do it this way. You got to do it this way. Or if you do it that way, you'll die. Or if you don't do this, the FCC is going to come in and shoot your dog. You know, like it's the hyperbole of it all. It's not based in reality. It's based on maybe very much their experiences coming up. So it's a learned trait that they learned from someone that did it to them. But it's oftentimes not in service of the actual solution or question of the person asking. It often is an excuse for them to talk about how great they are, or
to show everybody how smart they think they are.
How smart they are.
Something I've said from time to time.
And you can almost always feel it coming in the replies when they're very like pointed, kind of jabby responses, and they're not really answering the question. So going back to the guy with the dipole in our hypothetical example, the answer is, we'll try it and see if it works. Come back, and if you have a problem, we'll try and help you troubleshoot it. And what inevitably happens, the guy's got all the parts. He goes off and does it, and he goes, well, it worked, but I didn't really hear a lot of people. Or, you know, he had some kind of fundamental problem where it was like a short or something like that. That's great, though, because now you're building on that, and you can say, well, a painter's pole is probably too low to the ground. Do you have a tree? Can we suspend this thing in a tree? Oh, yeah, I got a 40-footer out back. I actually got two, so I can put both legs up. Yeah, let's try that. And it's this, it's a conversation. It's communicating, right? It's not this lectoral, I'm telling you how to do something. It's actually helping people learn. And I found that oftentimes it's the folks who just want to kind of talk at the individual, that they're doing it for, I don't know why. Probably exactly as you said, to make themselves feel like they know they're the wise, the sagely ham in the group, right?
The smartest one in the room.
Right. Versus it's all a journey. We're just at different points of the technical understanding, right, of the whole thing. So let's just figure out where you're at. Let's see if we can help you get further along. Why don't you go try it? Let's work out what we can do better, and you'll get a lot better from it. Now, then that's just one example. We could talk about this for the rest of the dang episode. But the other folks are the ones that they see something that's different and strange, and it's automatically bad. Like even you were like FT8 or digital modes. That's not real ham radio. Well, we got guys that still say that. Let's say that all the time.
I learned that in the online forums.
It's a learned trait. You learned to hate on digital modes, right? Not real radio. It's not real. Well, you still got guys that are like, oh yeah, that's not real radio. It's like, excuse me, my radio is radioing, sir. It is radiating RF energies. It's radio. Whether I'm squawking to a dude for 45 minutes on the mic, or my computer is wrapping up a QSO in 25 seconds or 30 seconds, then that's the same thing. It's just a different expression of it, right?
So then the continuation of some people that I am bashing. Why? And you mentioned a minute ago about how what they're saying sometimes is more is not in reality, or not necessarily based on reality.
Well, it's in their reality, their version of reality.
So why do so many of them spread these lies about FCC enforcement. So let's talk about FCC enforcement. If you go online and ask what's going to happen, I don't have a license. What happens if I talk on my boofwang? And the response will generally be, you will get a $10,000 fine.
Right.
If you keep doing it, you will go to prison. I see it happen every day. The prisons are filled with people that use their baofeng when they were off-roading.
They're on the chain gang now.
Yeah, and these... I once had somebody on one of my videos a long time ago say that the Forest Service rangers were writing tickets for people that were talking on radios without licenses. These people are so far removed from reality, and yet it's just, this is what they do. So first of all, is any of that true? Because you probably know more about the ham radio side of enforcement for talking about without a license, for using a non-type of accepted radio. I guess that's more on maybe GMRS.
Yeah.
Big, huge fines, people going to prison, say in the last 10 years. Because 20 or 30 years ago, yeah, you would get a fine. So in the past, I will concede that was true, when I was 9 years old. But say in the last 10 years, is that true? And why do they lie?
Prison,
so
no.
It's not true.
Let's just get that out of the way. Prison, no. I've never heard of prison. But I think to start the reply here, I think that goes back to the learned behavior, the learned story, the lore of amateur radio. Once upon a time, the FCC was much more active in amateur radio, both in the licensing process, the policing, the rulemaking, all that stuff. You used to have to go to an FCC location to test, physical location, an actual establishment that the government was paying for FCC business, right? That's done. We don't do that anymore, right? Now it's all volunteer examiner type stuff. Well, the individual that's saying, oh, the FCC is going to fine you, blah, 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 probably heard the stories from days ago, decades ago, when they were more active. The FCC used to have a monitoring system where they would send you nasty grams that said, hey, on such and such date, you did ... Cut it out. Or the opposite, they used to send out happy grams. If you did if you were a good example of a radio operator, they'd send you a note saying, hey, we were monitoring you on ... and you did ... Good job. Here's your gold star. Boom. Yeah, keep it up, right? And that was that happened often, or more often than we do now, which is like never. So they're running with those stories, just assuming that that's still the status quo, because how often does that ever really enter their lives? Probably never. So let's just use that thing we heard long ago, and let's just keep repeating the narrative like a game of telephone. The reality is since then, the FCC's budget, particularly for amateur radio, GMRS, CB, all that stuff, it's kind of stagnated. It's kind of just been chilling. And if you watch that video where they had the panel of the FCC enforcement, including Laura Smith, who's like the amateur radio enforcement person, they pretty much lay it down like, we have under like 20 cases a year where we're actually like fining people or doing an investigation, a long-term investigation. And all of the major fines that you've talked about on your channel, I've talked about some on mine, are just egregious interference causing, and likely for first responders, or I think somebody got it on CB because they were literally just keying down and playing music. GMRS had one of those, right, where it was like they were constantly just jamming a repeater. You're talking like just a level of no F's given, and I want to just ruin it for everybody that got the FCC involved. And even then, that was off of months of them doing it, not just like one cases, day and they paradropped in.
It's actually years.
Yeah,
and
years, sure.
So the process is, and tell me if I'm wrong, because I've spent a little time looking this up. The process is people file complaints. So the FCC is not out there looking for you. People file complaints, and you can file a complaint online, and I'm guessing, I have no data to back this up, I'm guessing they get hundreds or thousands of complaints every single day because it's really easy to do.
Amateur radio, not hundreds a day, but like hundreds over the course of a year. Yes, that kind of thing. But continue.
Okay, so a lot of people going online, very easily typing in a complaint.
Mm-hmm.
The FCC probably prioritizes that in some way. They will then choose to investigate someone, maybe send somebody out, listen, see if this is true, which is a tiny, tiny percentage. I'm guessing, tiny percentage of the actual complaints that they choose to investigate. And if they deem that, yes, this person is causing harmful interference, again, we're not talking about people that are interfering with the ambulances or emergency response or anything like that.
That's right.
Because that's serious, that's rare, but they will go after you if you do that. I'm just talking about being a dickhead on GMRS or ham. They investigate it, and let's say, okay, it's confirmed this guy is breaking the rules. We're going to go after him. They send you a letter, right?
Yes.
That is the process. They notify you. Mm-hmm. I refer to this as the mean letter from the FCC.
Yeah.
It says basically, stop. Then if you choose to not stop and continue doing it, they will either send you another letter or then continue the process to go and initiate a fine or whatever. I think it's usually another letter.
I believe it's another letter, and that letter sometimes levies a fine at the same time. Sometimes. It depends on the level of investigation they do.
Okay. So, and that number of letters sent is very, very small. I've done a couple of videos where I've looked through the letters sent just for the last couple of years, and it's near zero. And then not near, it's in the dozens, maybe. Mm-hmm. And then the people that ignore those letters, and there's a couple guys that are just like, fuck you, that just keep going.
Yep.
And then they get the little tribunal or whatever where the FCC decides that they're going to issue a fine. They notify you, the notice of apparent liability, which is another letter.
Yeah.
And so now you've been not really fined. You've gotten a notice that you owe this money. And some guys just keep going.
Yeah.
And then it comes to collection time. So for them to actually collect, they have to refer that over to, I think it's the Department of Justice.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's only a couple of cases that have gone that far. And I don't know if they've ever collected anything. I really don't. I don't know where to go to find the confirmation of collecting. I'm sure in the past they did. I'm talking again, in the last few years, please, for the love of Xenu, people do not leave comments saying, yes, they collected a fine from my next door neighbor in 1972.
Right. Actual proof. You need a link here, guys. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In the last few years.
Right.
So I guess my point is that back where I started is that some people are just so far removed from the reality of what it is than what is actually happening versus what the stories and the fairy tales that they're telling. Now, you mentioned earlier the sending the nasty grams and the happy grams from the FCC. I know that the American
ARRL.
League of Amazing Gentlemen, whatever it is.
That's it. Yep. The Extraordinary League of Amateur Radio Gentlemen.
They send out warnings, right?
Pretty rarely,
some
but
sort of
let's
notice.
say yes. Yeah.
Okay. And also happy grams? Or just
I don't know about a happy gram. I can't comment on that. I don't know.
Okay.
I would hope so.
Okay. So
I want a happy gram.
So they do send out the warnings, which some people on my channel have commented they were referring to those warnings from the ARRL or AAR, those guys, those gentlemen, as FCC warnings, which they are not.
Yes, they are not. Now, sometimes
so the ARRL is just a voluntary group of radio dorks, right?
Right. Sometimes the investigations done by the volunteer monitors can go into a longer investigation of somebody who's, creating these problems. You'll find that more on like HF though, not so much on the VHF UHF stuff. Again, that's what I know about this.
Okay, and those the ARRL,
yeah, ARRL.
Okay, they have an ear with the FCC, so that if they, and I know that is true, so that if they say, all right, we're now submitting this to the FCC as a complaint, It probably has a little higher priority than just some rando issuing a complaint or filing a complaint online. But still, when they formally issue that complaint, it still goes to that same starting point of, okay, now the FCC investigates, or maybe they use the information that the ARRL guys collected, and then, okay, they're going to get a nasty letter, which hopefully will stop being a dickhead.
And there's so many different opinions people have. The thing to keep in mind is that the enforcement side of the FCC, they're kind of there to enforce the Telecommunications Act, and that Congress gives them some amount of power that they can go in and do these rulemaking things. That's why you get those notices of rulemaking that the FCC makes. That simply means that they can say you've broken a rule and try to levy a fine against it. But there's no policing behind that. There's no FCC police agency. That's where you mentioned the DOJ. If they actually do need to go to collections, that's where the DOJ has to take it over, because that's actually the people that would come collect your radio equipment and do whatever, blah, 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 right? They have to engage with the DOJ to do that physical enforcement effort. The FCC is not doing that on their own. That's why this entire process is so long, because just think of how many hands an investigation has to go through before it actually gets to that level of collection. It's tons of people, lawyers, tons of lawyers, all kinds of different people at the FCC, the DOJ, etc.
Government work at its best.
At its best. Which, fun little note on that, if you go back and watch that video, Laura, who's the one who gets all these complaints from the amateur radio operators, she says, we'll get hundreds of these a year, and maybe only 7 to 20 turn into an ongoing investigation. And she says, a lot of them I get are simply, Bob interrupted the conversation I was having with Jerry on 40 meters on such and such date. And they provide no information, not enough details. And so she now has to treat this like a government process and go off and file this into the round file, hopefully. So we're even we gotta do a little bit better at all of the processes. It's a bit crazy when I look at it and hear you explain it, and that's what I've heard too. So it's wild. It's crazy.
Now, a lot of people, I guess I should say some people, every time I say these truths about no, you're not going to go to jail, and no, you're probably not going to get a $10,000 fine.
Yeah.
Some people act as though their entire worlds have fallen apart and crumbled around them.
Yeah.
And they take that to the next level they accuse me of saying that it's okay to break the rules. Where because I'm pointing out the truths and because I'm pointing out the lies and the fairy tales, is that the same, Mr. Ham radio operator, Josh?
Yeah.
Is me saying, go out there and break all the rules and be a dickhead?
It's absolutely not. And I think that some of this is a bit of the wizard behind the curtain from The Wizard of Oz. So the perception when Dorothy comes up to the wizard, it's this big flaming, monster. It turns out that it's just a guy behind a curtain with very little power, right? And I think that's the reality of it. So by you shining a light on this and trying to just speak factually, which again, if either one of us are wrong factually, correct us, and happy to to spread the word.
Leave a comment with a link to back up your
right. I think that by your pointing it out, they're taking that as you telling people
a personal attack.
Not that you're encouraging or endorsing people break rules, but that because you're showing how weak the system is, that it will, by its nature, the process itself will encourage people to start breaking the rules, which I'm not convinced it won't. That's the truth of it, right?
Some people will be dickheads and break the rules just because they can break the rules. They will spray paint a building in the middle of nowhere. We go off-roading. We see this all the time. They will destroy something just because they can, but that's not because, that's because they're dickheads and they're going to
Right.
be dickheads.
I don't think they were waiting for the Randolfo Not a Rubicon video telling you that the FCC is kind of toothless in an area to become jerks. They were holding back this entire time, and that was the last pebble that broke the dam. No, hardly. But it does give me pause for thought to think that right now all of our services, GMRS, amateur radio service, CB, we've got it pretty good. We've got we're kind of left on our own. We got a little, island of misfit toys thing going on where the FCC's not that engaged with us. If we cause enough problems and people start paying attention at the government level and it starts getting traction and the FCC starts getting more involved, that's not going to be good for us, right? Because now we're going to get a lot more help to do better
from the government,
which you and I share similar thoughts here. I don't think either one of us want that, right? So what's that look like? The FCC's got to staff up. They got to get more money to police things, to do more work, and that's all going to cost us. They're going to levy that value upon us in the form of licensing fees, right? It's all just going to go up from here. So if we all behave poorly enough so that the echoes of our issues make it to the government, then we're gonna get more help, and I don't know that we want that. In fact, I know we don't want that.
We do not want more help from the government.
No.
So the key here, kids, is don't be a dickhead.
Mm-hmm. Or as we like to say on amateur radio, don't be an alpha hotel, which is an asshole. But that's our slang term for that.
McRib or Enchilito?
McRib.
Why, out of all of the things that you could have done with your life and all of the things that you could have become and all the things that you could have accomplished, why instead did you make a YouTube channel about ham radio?
Well, my YouTube channel's decades or over a decade old at this point. That it existed before amateur
So you gave
radio.
up on life decades ago.
That's right. I was always a little hacker kid. I wanted to know how things worked. You ever seen that stupid Dilbert comic where they say he's got the knack, that he took apart something and put it back together? Like, that was literally me. Like, my dad would break a tool, I'd take it apart, put it back together, and it worked again, kind of thing. And, played around with stuff, figured out how DC motors and all kinds of stuff worked. I've always tinkered with stuff. And I've also been fascinated with just data transmission on the internet, home networks, all that stuff. And amateur radio is kind of like one of those mothership sandbox hobbies where we're allowed fairly open use of these frequencies for data, information, voice, all that stuff. And we can kind of do what we want, playing around with leveraging technologies, integrating technologies together. And it just, to the hacker mindset kid that I used to be, and now an engineer now, it just is, it's a playground. It's a playground of opportunity for things to have fun with and experiment. It's really cool.
Why'd you put it on
super
YouTube?
nerd stuff.
Why'd you put it on YouTube?
Oh, when I first started my YouTube channel back in 2006, so before I was even an amateur radio licensed person, my wife said, "Josh, you have way too many hobbies. Why don't you start making videos explaining to people why you bought the things that you bought and why you do the things that you do?" Because back then I was doing metal detecting. I would go out to the San Gabriel Mountains and dig and run a sluice box for gold prospecting. And I'd have waterproof cameras that I would put in the sluice box so you could see the gold get collected and all that stuff. I was just always screwing around with something. And she was like possibly worried about bankruptcy, wanted to figure out a way to recoup some of the costs of the hole that I was constantly digging with buying crap and making, all this different stuff. She's like, "You should make videos on it." And sure enough, it's a great little outlet for doing all kinds of different hobbies.
Do some people ever leave stupid comments on your videos trying to show everyone how smart they think they are? So how do you deal with those comments? Some YouTubers just never even look at their comments, and it's just a free-for-all in the comments. Some people, some YouTubers will delete those comments. Yeah. Some will get into a conversation. So what do you do generally?
All of the above. All of the above. And let me just say straight up that I only turned my channel into the Ham Radio Crash Course in 2018. So from 2006 to 2018, I had many different topics, and I've had jerk comments on every topic of everything I've ever made, right? It's just the inevitability of anonymous, pseudo-anonymous communication on the internet. And so oftentimes I will treat it, even if it's a completely jerk comment, like totally venomous, toxic stuff, I will try and glean a point from it that they were actually trying to make, or try to find it. It may not exist, but I'll try and find it. And I have evolved certain things in the way I do videos and how I communicate because of some of those comments. Came from a horrible, nasty place, but I try and find something constructive out of it. Now, some people I just delete and I say mute from channel. I just don't want to hear any more of it. And then others, one of the things I end up talking about a lot is you probably get this, and I hope we can maybe hit on it later when I get to my Q&A portion of this. But I get a lot of comments that the airwaves should be free. There should be no government. The airwaves should be free. So
the airwaves are given to us by Xenu, and they should be free.
That's right. That's right. They're gifted upon us. So I'm of two minds of that, because on one hand, I want less government involvement. On the other hand, I don't know how I could possibly police, how we as humans could divvy up our finite electromagnetic spectrum so that everyone could just do whatever they want, right? So I'm always in conversations with people on those topics, because I engage with them and say, how would you do this? How would you manage it? Would it just be a free-for-all, an anarchist paradise? Well, that doesn't seem to work. So what do we do there, right? So I actually do engage with those type of comments, because I want good ideas. I want to see how we can do this on our own, if possible. But so far, I've gotten no good answers.
Yeah, I just delete them. Actually, I don't delete them all. You're
so
right.
You pin to the top.
Some I'll pin to the top so that everybody can see how stupid they are.
That's right.
I do also. There is a small percentage where there is some constructive criticism buried in that stupidity and childish tantrum that they're throwing. So yeah, I do listen to them, and I have, just like you said, the worst comments ever. Like, oh, you know what? But that one little thing,
there's a little nugget sometimes.
Is right.
Yeah.
He's right.
Sure.
So, so I'll get that little piece of right out of it, and then I'll delete it.
And then delete it. Yeah, that's it.
Right.
That's right.
And just so people know, I don't think most people know this. When a YouTuber, a content creator, deletes their comment, we don't really delete it. We remove it from our channel. The person that wrote that comment can still see it. So that person does not know that nobody else can see their comment. And I think that is genius on YouTube's part.
It's beautiful.
Because now they're like, oh, I got in the last word. Yep. No, you didn't, fucker.
They're shadow banned, basically, from the channel.
Shadow banned, right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They have no interaction. They're in their own little hole that they're talking to themselves.
Their own cave. Yeah, they're in a little cave.
Yes.
So what about the fans, the loving and adoring fans? And I don't want to say anything negative. Well, I am saying something negative about it, but I don't want to sound negative.
Okay.
Because I appreciate you. And I'm pointing at the viewer, not at you, Josh.
That's right. I know.
I do really appreciate my viewers. And I know that you do too. But what about those ones that look up to you so much that they send you a 10 or 20 paragraph email asking for your personalized help along with their life story and whatever else?
Oh, buddy.
Do you give them your one-on-one help, or do you refer them to a video that says, here's what I talk about? Because you're nice. I just delete them. I'm like, listen, right now, loving viewers, I appreciate you, but my support ends when I turn off the recording button. My videos, that's where you get my support. You send me a big, long email asking me a bunch of questions, I usually by the 7th or 8th paragraph, I'm like, I don't have time for this. I'll delete it. But you are a much better and nicer person than I am. So how long do you read them before you delete them? Or what do you do?
Your approach might be more mentally healthy. I respond to a ton of emails. I'll tell you. Just
forward all of mine to yours?
I'm unwilling to take on that load, but hear me out. So when I first started the Amateur Radio Crash Course in 2018-19, I was underwater in Facebook messages, emails, YouTube comments, the whole 9 yards. And I ended up having to create the Facebook group, the Ham Radio Crash Course. And I would tell people, funnel your questions to there, because we were doing really strong administration that we don't let the sad hams snipe people and peck at people with bad answers. We just delete them. We kick them out of the group, right? They just don't exist. Constructive criticism only kind of thing. And that brought it down. That brought the total down. Then I had a ham reach out to me and say, you really should create a Discord because that will help even more. And he was totally right. The Discord is the best thing probably to come out of the community aspect of my channel. And it is huge, and it is a group of people that are all super positive and helping each other out. We do admin the crap out of that too. We have to. We still get salty people as well. But I can point people towards that, the 24-hour ham help chat room kind of thing that people will work together and solve problems, all that. But yeah, I still get a ton of emails. I try to reply to them and point people to a specific video or to the Discord. If you are a Patreon member, yes, of course, I reply to the Patreon comments and messages because they're going through that whole process and
that's
actually
a
helping
good
out
point.
my channel. I absolutely help those reply to those people and meet as soon as I can.
I have the premium members, and I always try to answer those. So they get a lot more respect. And my premium members are immune to getting their comments deleted. No matter, YouTube might delete them depending on how far over the line they go. But I don't remove or hide or shadow ban any of the premium members.
I don't think I do either, but sometimes the phone app is not the greatest. I don't. Sometimes that creator
You don't do it on purpose.
Don't do it on purpose. No, absolutely not. But yeah, Patreon channel members, all that, they get the highest level of support for sure.
So I guess that's actually good. If you take those questions and put them out on the Discord or the Facebook or wherever you're putting them, so that it's not just one-on-one, you're really helping 100 people or 1,000 people who probably have that same question at some time or another.
There are many questions that I've received that have turned into videos because of that exact thing, because it's such a good question, or I get it like 1,800 times that I'm like, why have I just not made a video answering this? And then I can just point everybody to that, and then I never have to answer it again kind of thing. So yeah, definitely done that too.
That's good. Definitely a better person than I am.
I don't know about that. But
all right, now we're at the part of the video that everybody actually came to watch, and that's the part of the video where I hand control over to you. I give you the talking stick and allow you to either to ask me questions, or talk about a subject that I didn't bring up as much as you want for 3 minutes. So here is the talking stick, sir.
Okay, I will take the stick. Here we go. Got it. All right, so GMRS, I think we all understand the privileges afforded to GMRS. Do you feel that it is appropriately spec'd as for what you want it to be and what you think I hate to say the word community, but the licensees of GMRS should have? Is there something you would like them, the FCC, to say you can now do this or that or whatever? Where do you stand on that today?
I think overall, for what I use it for, it's perfect. My normal use of going off-road or adventuring or whatever, yeah, it's perfect. But when I occasionally sit on the couch or I have a repeater, a GMRS repeater, when I think of it as living in the big city and sitting on the couch chatting with friends, which I rarely do over GMRS, I think more channels would be useful. Particularly more repeater channels would be useful. But overall, I think, it is what the FCC wanted, like we talked about earlier. It is a family use service, and for family use service, it's perfect. If you want to push it a little more, make it a little less family use and more radio dork use, then more channels, and particularly more repeater channels, I think would be great. But I don't care one way or another.
Yeah, I think I agree with that completely. I think that they have actually done a really good job of sandboxing this thing, and that's exactly what their mission was, at least if we take that as their mission, that they did that. So then I know you've made a lot of videos on the repeater linking stuff and the sideline email or message like, hey, you might want to cut this out. Not an official FCC blah, blah, blah on shutting off the linking. Like, where do you stand on the linking thing? Do you care that much, or is it just a good video topic? I mean, it is. It's a good video topic. Like, where do you stand? Do you even care?
I care a little because I could see a value. I have a use case for linked GMRS repeaters when we go off-roading, having access to a repeater is great, if so that I don't have to use my Garmin Mini to call a helicopter, because that's expensive if we have an emergency or something like that. And there are the case where one of my local repeater owners wanted to link 2 repeaters so that if I'm up in the desert 50 miles from my house, I could reach a repeater, but its range in the other direction is limited. If he was going to link those repeaters and double or quadruple the range of that first repeater, that would be great. So that would be great. If they don't allow it, they don't allow it. So basically, I don't care. But it would be nice.
That's a really good example, because I think we all focus on the dudes across the country all just rag chewing with each other, which is like, I don't care about that.
And that's what ruins it. And that probably would happen if
right.
my local guy did that, is that I'd never get to use it because some guy in New York's talking to some guy in Montana.
Yeah.
The repeater's jammed all the time.
But a kind of cool little ad hoc internet linked 2 repeaters when you're off-roading, that's actually really cool. Like a little ammo can, repeater box that you set up that has a 5G or whatever somewhere before you get where you go. That's slick. That's smart.
I had my repeater, the GMRS repeater that I own, used to be on Zello, which I think was afoul of those rules. And just coincidentally, 6 months before these, big new headlines about not linking repeaters anymore, 6 months before that happened, my hardware failed, and it just wasn't worth the hassle, and I unplugged it.
Right.
But the problem there was that my repeater and the channel that it's on and 900 square miles around me was jammed up all the time by one guy in Colorado on Zello talking to another guy on Zello in New York, when they could have just been talking directly on Zello, but now it's all being repeated through the repeater. So
their favorite episode of My Little Pony they were talking about, probably, I bet. So
something like that.
Yeah. All right. So then going back, I hinted at it earlier. These comments that I get, right? The airwaves should be free. You should be able to transmit on any frequency, at any power level, at any time you want. One, do you get those comments? I'm assuming you probably do, considering the community of people that watch your stuff. And then where are you at on all that? How do you line up? And if we were to go completely anarchy, how would we handle it? How would we deal with it?
I'm torn. Yes, I do get those comments.
Yeah.
And I'm like you, I think I'm torn, because if it was complete anarchy, people are dickheads, and it would just degenerate into CB radio or worse.
Yeah.
Or worse, actually, because of it would not be good. The other side of the coin of that is, more government.
Right.
So I'm torn.
See, The thing that I always like to add to this when I talk with people, it's not that we would have anarchy where it's just a bunch of dudes competing with each other for the frequencies. It's the nameless, faceless corporations with unlimited dollars that would take over your favorite frequencies with encrypted, silent, no way to figure out who they were, that they proliferate everywhere like LTE towers and stuff like that would just completely cover everything, right? So think of, we're just dudes hanging out. You're off-roading, I'm whatever, with the limited funds we have, just playing around. But faceless, nameless corporations have unlimited amounts of money. They'll hog up every frequency and make more money using it, right? So if you go to complete anarchy, how do you stop them? That's the big thing that I don't have a solution for.
You don't. I never even thought of that. So I guess what you're saying is big government is good.
No, I'm not. See, that's my problem, right? I don't want more help from the government, but at the same time, the electromagnetic spectrum is finite. Like, there are only so many hertz all up in this piece that we can cram people to use them, right? And so, say what you will, the FCC I think did a pretty good job with GMRS laying out the privileges. Same with amateur radio. I think they're doing a good enough job there. But I also think they do a pretty good job at distributing those other frequencies for the other primary users, like businesses, corporations, and stuff like that use that to make real serious money. And if that wasn't there, they would just keep expanding until there were no frequencies left, because they're making money, right? That's how it would work.
That's true.
Yeah. But yeah, that was, thank you for giving me the stick there. The conch, I guess, is this the Lord of the Flies conch that we're passing around.
Right, give it back to me now.
Okay, here you go. Yeah. But yeah, thank you for that. Those are good questions all around.
All right, well, thank you for joining. This was fun. We'll have to do it again, assuming people leave comments to ask us to do it again or to see more of this type of videos.
Yep.
So if you've made it this far watching, you are one of the few. Leave a comment. Tell both me and Josh what you think. So thanks for joining, Josh. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon, and we will see you later.
I'll say 73. Thank you, Randolph. Appreciate it.
And on GMRS, we say 69.